Welcome to your 20-minute podcast with David Brower, where we do our best to give you useful information in 20 minutes or less. Now, here's your host, 5-time Voice Arts Awards nominee, David Brower.
Thanks, Alan. This is David Brower with your 20-minute podcast. Our special guest today from Dubai is Silke Glaab, and she is an executive coach, psychologist who helps executives and experts to live a life without burnout, stress, anxiety, or proofing themselves so they elevate their life and work to the next level. She developed Elevate Intensive Therapy over a course of 15 years, combining the best methods from different therapies to bring rapid transformational change for her clients. Silke, good. Well, nice to talk to you, and greetings from Colorado and hello to Dubai.
Yeah, thank you very much, David, to have me.
So you've been doing this for a while. How did you get into the study of being a psychologist, working with being an executive coach, developing your therapy? Where did all that begin?
Yeah, it actually started when I studied psychology, and I specialized in organizational psychology. Then I worked in how you can say it's call center, and I was the head of communication there. Mm-hmm. And from there, I went to Kenya as a development worker, and it was a project on female circumcision and create awareness in the community.
Wow.
Yeah, and later I worked for the private sector, in educational sector, and it all had something to do with communication. Building up resilience, finding better ways to communicate. And I started my executive coaching like 4 or 5 years back, next to my school counseling. And I discovered that there are a lot of similarities between what's going on in a teenager and what's going on in the workplace. And it had something to do with, am I good enough? And then, am I good enough? Stress, resilience, performance. How can I perform at my best?
Yeah.
How can I pass exams? And in the work, how can I perform at my level best? So there were quite some similarities. And later, when I worked with clients and they had issues, and the work I'm offering is that we find the root cause of the issues. Mm-hmm. And we often found ourselves back in situations of their childhood or teenage age.
That makes sense, because when we're young, I mean, we only know what we know and how we're raised and where we are. And we carry a lot of those things, I think, into our certainly into our teenage years and many times our adult years. And until we find somebody like you that can say, well, let's take a look at this a different way. How's your self-esteem? How do you feel about the people around you? Where's your head at? People just kind of stay where they are unless they're able to reach out to an expert like you, aren't they?
Yes, because you're like driven by programs in your subconscious mind. Mm-hmm. Let's make it practical. I have a client, let's call him Alex.
Okay.
And Alex came and he said, he feels quite burned out. He had a very successful business in recruiting. And out of sudden, the whole thing didn't work out anymore. He lost clients. He had to reduce his staff. Then there were some relationship issues. And this really pushed him into a very traumatic state.
Yeah.
And he ended up, he said it's burnout, but in fact, it was already quite a depressive state. And he said that he doesn't know anymore. And he's totally, he doesn't know even how to concentrate. He was not able to focus.
Sure.
And in the first time, it was like more to constellate what's really going on. There is the relationship issue. There is this issue of the business that's not running anymore. It totally collapsed. And then there is this thing of depression. And then I often ask people to constellate it somehow with objects. Find an object for yourself, for depression, relationship, and your business. And then the way people select objects and how they put them together in a kind of installation,
Mm-hmm.
you can already see what's going on. Yeah.
Oh, that's
And for
interesting.
him,
Yeah.
the depression was something metallic, yeah, like a wire, and you could not even dismantle the wire.
Okay.
He saw himself very, very small. The family had turned his back away from him because he could not reach them anymore. And business was just something very flat.
So when he started spiraling, I mean, that affects everything, right? I mean, the business starts
Yes.
spiraling, your self-esteem, your confidence starts spiraling. You take it home because that's what you do, and then your family starts spiraling. And all of a sudden you're at the bottom in this depressive state, and you don't know how to dig yourself out. And you're able to help them do that with different objects. So tell me how the objects work.
Yes, so the depression was a metallic object that was actually very wired.
Mm-hmm.
Then for himself, he had put a very small item. It was like a small key.
Mm-hmm.
Then a family was, in his case, he had a small miniature of the two kids and the wife, but they were not looking at him anymore. He had the feeling they disconnected. And the business was a torn notice book, like a booklet that was totally torn. And then out of this, we could see what's really going on, what kind of projection he makes. And he found himself totally near to that wired depression thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing was just to put this depression out of his circle of life, quite away. And he said, even if I push this away, I still see it and I feel affected by it. Then I said, okay, let's just cover it. Let's just put a cloth and cover it. And when he did that, it was not solved, but he had the feeling the family could turn around and could approach him.
Wow.
And this I found very, very interesting. And then I said, okay, this means when you're more in the center of your life and you cover that depression, then your family can actually come to you and you feel supported. From there, it was clear that depression had a kind of meaning for him, a meaning that he feels disconnected and not supported.
Well, he feels very alone, doesn't he? Very alone, very isolated.
Very alone and isolated.
Yeah.
And for him, when we did now a second session came where we really went back to the root source of it. And it was now really easy to ask, so when was the first time you felt really isolated and not supported? And he had the feeling quite early in his life that his parents were busy with other stuff, and he was the third child. He always thought, okay, maybe they couldn't afford me because they were already struggling with money.
Sure.
And I came unexpectedly. And therefore, he always had the feeling, I'm not wanted and I'm a burden for people.
Well, he's not worthy.
And
right?
this, I find, it was very, 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 very deep.
Yeah.
And from there, we could really create awareness that even now, depression is like showing him this old program of being a burden and not being wanted in that moment, and not being wanted even as an owner of a business. In everything, in his relationship, in his business, his customers, not wanted. And then we healed that, and we installed much more supportive suggestions. And this is best done in a kind of hypnotic state, because then your brain, your subconscious mind is very suggestible. And then we did even a recording to give him really positive things and disconnect himself from that belief he created when he was very small. And we went even back to the old scenes and said, that's not me anymore. I'm not 3, 5, 7 years old anymore. Yeah, I can understand now. I don't need like all the nurturing from my parents anymore.
Yeah.
I have my own kids, and I'm treating my kids in a different way. So I have really grown up. I'm an adult now.
What a wonderful,
And
wonderful breakthrough.
yes,
Wow.
and this was very important because you have to go back to the same memory and come in as an adult and even take that small child with you
Sure.
and say, okay, now maybe my parents didn't give me that love I needed, but now I'm an adult myself and I can take care of that inner child.
Absolutely. And by taking care of that
Right?
inner child, you're all of a sudden find a way to become a true parent to your own kids, you know?
Yes. And this was a very, very powerful session.
Sounds like it.
And then we did a recording, like to give him again to find when he gets back into a very sad state that he can install a safe place and then listen to these positive suggestions and connect to his inner child and let this inner child grow
So on
up.
the recordings that you send back with them, are they, pardon me, are there recordings of you, recordings of them, recordings of your conversation?
Yeah, recordings of me I do after the session because then I know, okay, what is the client's safe place.
Mm-hmm.
So I guide the person back to his or her safe place. And then whatever suggestions we brought up in the real session, I just repeat them again.
So it's kind of a refresher for them, for lack of a better term,
Yes.
right? To bring them back into that safe place.
Yes, and into that state and in this knowing that I'm listening now to much better and supportive suggestions than before. And I recommend to do that for 2 or 3 weeks. And then after that, he had like a review session. What else does he need? And in that case, Alex needed more mindfulness, that whenever specific thoughts are coming up, that he can detach from them, that he can diffuse these thoughts and come back to the present moment.
Oh, wow.
And he really came out of that state. He came out because I was also concerned. I'm not a clinical psychologist. And I saw that he's quite deep in a depression. And then I say, you really have to continue to see a psychiatrist just to stay safe.
Yes.
But then he didn't need it at all anymore. He really recovered and then started to build up his business, come up with other ideas, because before he could not even focus anymore. Everything what he read or he wanted to do, it just vanished into like a fog. There was always a fog in his mind.
Wow.
And that's a quite powerful session.
That is a powerful session. Let's go back to the objects for just a moment. How do you, when you're having that initial session, where do the objects come from? Do you present them different objects? Do they think about
them? Yeah. If it's possible, I ask them if they can just use a small table and then bring objects from the household or from the living room and select what they feel really drawn to and then place it on a defined table. So I need a defined space and then make a picture and send it to me. Or they can bring it up in their mind's eye. Then I guide them to see like a circle of life, and it's like a circle, and now they place themselves, the family member, depression into that.
That is so fascinating because as you are living in your home environment and you spiral down so far and you're in this fog so deep, but yet you are drawn to certain objects in your home that you obviously don't know why, but you're able to lay those things out, and then you're able to help them translate, I guess is a good word, what those objects mean and how you can use those objects to get them back on track professionally, personally, spiritually. That's fascinating.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that these objects, they cause a certain reaction in your body, because I also want that people connect to their body. We analyze a lot in our mind, And that's also part of the whole thing. But an important part is also to connect to your body and feel. Therefore, I say, don't rationalize to pick an object, just out of your gut feeling.
Yeah.
How would you describe? How does depression look for you? Or what is the picture of you right now? And of course, if you're depressed, you feel very, very small, or you feel like hiding somewhere, like a jar just over your head. And this is, you create an image because this image is already in your brain, and with an image comes a certain feeling. And this is where I want to bring people.
Where I would have a problem with that at some level, I think, is I'm really good at overthinking things. So unless I really caught my breath, tried to slow down as best as I could, be as present as I possibly could in the moment, I might be going, well, let's see, there's a jar over there. Yeah, I think that might do this. Okay, I'm going to grab that knife over here. You know what I mean? I don't, it would be very difficult for me, I think. I may not know that for sure, obviously, but I'm pretty good at overthinking things. And so there must be a way that you help them simplify that process.
Yeah, well, what I do first is I guide them really in a relaxed state. Yeah, I already connect them to the body before we start.
That makes perfect sense.
And even in any decision you make, there's already an emotion involved in it. So before you even consciously become aware of your decision, you have already decided in your brain.
True story.
And when I'm bringing them into a more relaxed state and connect them really into their body, then they can, do it more intuitively.
I love that. On your website, and it is silkcelia.com, that is Silk, S-I-L-K, Celia, C-E-L-I-A, silkcelia.com. And if you click on the coaching tab, the question is, do you feel burnt out, anxious, or stressed? Discover the transformational therapy to reset your mind for health and success in 4 sessions. Without dozens of therapy sessions, waiting lists, or being tracked by insurance. I absolutely love that. And then they can just click on that link and book a free session with you and kind of put their toe in the water, if you will, and get a good sense of how they will work with you, right?
Exactly. And also because in this kind of relationship, it's also important if you create rapport.
Yes.
If you feel really connected to that person, and if you trust that person.
Trust is...
And therefore, it's very important that both of us have a conversation before, and then also to figure out if this kind of therapy can help you at that moment.
Yeah.
Maybe you need something else. And I don't have only people who are like totally depressed. In often the case, it's also issues of self-esteem.
Yeah.
That you feel you're not making progress in your career, or you really want to get like your startup and you're trying to get funds, but it's not working out. And then you ask yourself why others are getting it and not me.
Yeah.
And often it's also an issue of self-esteem, of I'm not good enough, therefore people are not opting for me.
We're just about out of time, and I want to make sure that people get to your website, because there's some free things on. If you go to the blog, you'll see a Leader's Care to Self-Care, Complete Guide to Anxiety, 3 Ways to Overcome Burnout. Through this blog, you can get a real sense of how these different programs and how you can help people. And again, it is S-I-L-K Celia. It's silkcelia.com. You can learn about the coaching, her blog. You can reach out to her and put your toe in the water. You got nothing to lose. And no matter where you are in the world, she could give you a hand up. So thank you so much for taking the time. I really enjoyed talking with you today.
Thank you very much, David, for having me on your show. And thank you very much to your audience for listening.
Listen to Your 20-Minute Podcast with David Brower on the go. Downloads are available on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, any podcast app, and on our website at davidbrowervo.com/Your 20-Minute Podcast. Until next time, thank you for listening.